bullet still be accurate if it is not fired from a firearm? Let's say the hammer is the firing charge. Then the slugs that are shot out of it will go who knows where in what attitude. If you put a warhead in a barrel and hit it with a hammer, it will fly in a straight line down the barrel. If the barrel is rifled, the slug will spiral along the rifling, further increasing the stability of the slug's flight. Replace the hammer with gunpowder, and the high-pressure gas generated by the gunpowder explosion will shoot the slug out of the barrel. But there's a problem with this, and that's the fact that loading ammunition is very troublesome. The firing speed of the gun was very slow. Later, engineers designed a customized cartridge with a shell casing. The warhead and the primer were integrated into the bullet. By hitting the primer at the bottom of the bullet, it can be fired. This greatly increased the speed of loading and firing. The primer firing method was also improved. Since it was impractical to use an additional hammer, the engineers devised a complementary firing mechanism. First, a hammer was added behind the firing pin. But one hammer was not enough. It did not have enough potential energy to hit the firing pin. So the engineers added a link under the hammer and used a spring at the bottom of the stock to hold it in place. That way, when the hammer is triggered back, it compresses the spring to build up force, and then releasing the hammer would complete the impact. Then the firing pin and barrel are integrated into the holster, so that pulling the holster by hand pushes the hammer back and builds up the force of the hammer. The holster is attached to the barrel by a spring. This will automatically reset the hammer with the holster moving back. But there's another problem. The unobstructed hammer will move forward with the holster. So a sear is needed to hold the hammer in place and to stabilize the potential energy of the spring. Underneath the hammer is a specially shaped cam. The sear can be attached to the cam teeth at a specific position, preventing the cam from rotating and holding the potential energy from the spring in place. The sear is then connected to the trigger. The next trigger pull activates the sear, releasing the locked cam. The potential energy built up by the spring then drives the hammer against the firing pin. There's another problem here. The sear won't reset itself if there's no external force involved. That's why a sear spring plate has to be added, so that it can automatically catch the cam teeth when the hammer moves. Now that the design of the firing mechanism is complete, it's time to solve the problem of how to load the ammunition. There's a spring at the bottom of the magazine that automatically pushes the bullet upward. The top of the magazine has a notch that prevents the bullet from being pushed out by the spring. The slide inside the holster pushes the bullet forward along the notch. But the barrel is a bit high, so the bullet can't enter the barrel smoothly. But don't worry. The engineers have thought of this problem from the beginning. The barrel is attached to the gun body by a movable pin. When the holster moves backward, the teeth on the top will be stuck in the groove of the barrel and move backward with the barrel, and make the barrel tilt slightly, so that the bullet is pushed through the barrel by the slide. And then the barrel is brought back into position by the teeth on the holster. When the bullet is fired, the recoil pushes the holster and the cartridge case back. The casing hits the raised ejector on the side of the slide and is ejected through the holster opening. The holster is then reset by the spring, and the cartridge is loaded. If you keep the trigger pressed, the hammer has no sear limitation and will automatically hit the firing pin as the holster is reset and loaded until the magazine is empty. The pistol becomes a fully automatic weapon. To prevent this, the engineers put an isolator inside the sear. It disconnects the trigger from the sear. And at the same time, it's held up by a spring-loaded plate. Only when the slider reaches a certain position does the isolator have room to rise, creating a connection between the sear and the trigger. At this point, you can pull the trigger to fire the bullet.